Alright guys, so I've had a lot of questions about running a side scan transducer on a kayak. So stay with me and I'm going to show you how I mounted up that transducer. Alright, so I do get quite a few questions about mounting a side scan transducer. And if you will notice, this transducer is 9.5 inches. So that seems to cause a lot of problems for people. So I am running the Attack, as you've seen from my previous videos. I have a flex pod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to mount that up. So to get started, let me kind of do a quick rundown of some of the things that you're going to need. You're going to need a piece of flat aluminum stock. It needs to be about 2 inches wide. I went with something relatively thin, make it nice and easy to bend so I don't have to have any tools. So go ahead and pick up a piece of aluminum from your local hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever it may be. You're going to need, of course, a bunch of zip ties. You're going to need a bunch of just miscellaneous stainless steel hardware. I like to have, a couple different mounting options when it comes to the GPS piece of it, because you got to factor that in. So you can go and get yourself a Yak Attack slide track. This one right here happens to be a foot long, but what I like about the plastic ones is it's really easy to cut them down to shape, and now I can get 4 or 5 pieces of slide track out of that. I can drill holes, makes mounting really, really easy. If you are going to go with that slide track and you don't have anything already installed, you're definitely going to need to get yourself a ram mount with the slide track adapter on the bottom. These are very common. You can pick them up online. You can pick them up at, say, ACK, anything like that. Link will be down below in the description. Anytime you're drilling holes in a kayak, you're going to need some sort of silicone, so make sure to have that. I am using this ram mount right here, so it is the universal. Of course, it's already got the GPS bracket on it, but it is just the universal piece. It does have on the bottom of it, and this is the way I've got mine mounted up, is this little ball right here. So this is a permanent mount to the kayak, and I happen to have it on the flex pod. Then it attaches to the dog bone, and then there's a plate on the bottom that's 7 inches, and it's got all kinds of holes for mounting options, so it's universal. Whether you're running a Lowrance, a Humminbird, or a Garmin, you'll be able to mount that up. And if I can remember correctly, the model number on this is B-111, and I'll have that in the description down below as well. So basically it gives you all the options for articulation of your screen. Of course, I've got the 2 mounting nuts that go on the side of the Lowrance. In this case, you've seen the videos. I've got the Lowrance TI, and then of course I've got the flex pod that comes in my kayak. You don't have to have a flex pod. I've got a couple ideas for alternatives. So if you are running something where you need an arm hanging over the side, I've got you covered on that as well. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing I did was I installed the flex pod into the kayak. I went ahead and clamped it down so I can make sure that it's secured and it's going to be in the orientation that it is whenever I fish. The next thing I did, I took a tape measure and I measured what kind of distance I needed to get down underneath the kayak to make sure this side scan's working. And I'll throw up a tape measure with a little clip so you can see that as well. But essentially, all I did was I took that aluminum bracket and I bent it into a C shape. Now, it's very important you start with the transducer side. This is where people make a mistake. They start with the flex pod side. But what you want to do is you want to take your piece of flat aluminum, take your original mounting bracket that comes with that transducer, lay that down on top of that piece of aluminum. That way you know how long it needs to be, and you've already got the template for your hole pattern. Makes it really, really easy. Now go ahead and leave yourself some slack, because when you bend that aluminum up, it is going to take up some of that material. So go ahead and start with the transducer side. You can leave it short, and I'll have close-ups of all this. You can leave it short on this side, and I just hit it with a grinder to kind of round it off a little bit. And then once you mount it up, you can see where it's mounted here. take your measurement for how deep it needs to be, and that's how long your bend needs to be on the back side. So I went ahead and bent that. I put it in a vise that's mounted to a table, just pushed it over, and then hit it with a hammer just to make sure it's nice and even and nice and straight. You want to make sure this thing's in line. You don't want it to be canted off to the other side, because you'll never get it to slip into the flex pod hole. The next thing I did after that is I went ahead and bent it one more time, coming up the distance underneath the flex pod, and this can vary for you. You don't have to go the entire distance. What I did is I made sure to line up my mounting holes, and I got coverage for the holes that I had from the previous transducer. So pretty straightforward, nice easy setup there. Once I did that, use the provided hardware to mount that transducer. It's a real fine metric thread with a Phillips head on top. Of course, it's stainless steel hardware as well. So I went ahead and mounted that down, and then running up inside, I just have some of that random hardware we talked about earlier. I like to use a bolt and a nut because it's more secured, and then of course I use locking nuts as well. Once you run those up into your flex pod, you're going to want to go ahead and apply that silicone. And again, this is just by JB Weld. It's clear all-purpose RTV silicone sealant and adhesive. So put a liberal amount in between the metal bracket and the flex pod, and then I like to go ahead and cover over the screw heads as well. Not going to hurt anything. Nobody's ever going to see it. I'm not worried about how pretty it works, how pretty it looks. I'm worried about how it works. The next thing you're going to do is I'm going to run the cable up the back side of the flex pod. I'm going to zip tie the slack up all the way to that bracket. I don't want it hanging out loose or anything like that. I don't want to bang it or bump it, and I definitely don't want to have to ever replace this transducer if I can help it. Coming up the back side here, I have a hobie through hole fitting, and because it's already installed, it's kind of hard to show you, but I'll throw down a little picture so you can see what it looks like. You run your cable in there. This is a 1-inch hole, so you will need a 1-inch paddle bit to drill through this. Word of advice, when you're drilling into this material, because it's a softer, thinner plastic, let the drill bit do the work. Drill yourself a pilot hole and then let that paddle bit do what it needs to do. Do not force it. It does not need to be installed in less than 30 seconds. So once you're done with that, go ahead and pull all of your transducer cable inside the flex pod. This is probably going to be about 15 to 20 feet, and as you can see on the inside here, I just have this cable coiled up real nice and neat. No matter what you do, do not cut that cable. If you cut the cable, you ruin the transducer. Don't make a $300 mistake. So once you coil it up nice and neat, leave yourself about a foot of slack, and then of course right here on top of the flex pod I've installed another hobie through hole fitting. Pull that transducer end right here, pull that up through the top of the pod, and now you have that transducer completely mounted to this. I like to go ahead and go back, put silicone inside of both of the through hole fittings here and on top, just to keep water out of the flex pod. So once you've done that, now's the chance you get to install the RAM mount for your GPS. This little bracket right here, I just happen to mount it down on the top, but this is where you could take slide track. You can also set slide track down right here and utilize the other ball mount if you wanted to. Lots of options there. That's up to you. Maybe you're going to set it off to the side instead of having it dead center in the kayak. But that pretty much gets this set aside. Once you're done with that, you'll have the RAM mount ball will come to the center here. I always set it up with the knob on the right hand side because I am right-handed. Let me tighten this guy up so you can see. So now you can see with that RAM mount mounted up on top, and of course I can change the angle, do whatever I need to do to mount that up. It's nice, clean install, makes it really easy. So let me show you a couple quick little alternatives. if you're not going to go with a flex pod. Maybe you don't have a flex pod on your kayak. Maybe you're running one of the other major brands and you have slide tracks on the side and you need to mount it over to the side. So what you would want to do, you still want to utilize the slide track. You know, whether you go ahead and put in the entire foot, you've got that existing one, whatever it may be, you're going to want to install that. All right, so say you've got your slide track. Now you have your GPS mounted on your slide track piece over the side. Of course, if you tighten it up all the way. So now you can have that over your right side if you're right-handed. Maybe you like it on your left. Maybe it's just the way you throw your lure. You want to get this thing out of your way. There is something you're going to need to do. You don't want that 15 to 20 feet worth of cable laying on the deck of the boat. Most people like to hide that cable inside. So there are these little tiny black plastic covers, and I'll show it here, a clip in the bottom. And what this does is this allows you to drill the 1-inch hole to go down inside of that kayak, run the cord inside where you can coil it up internally, and then bring it back up through and cover that hole back up so you have a nice clean install. So you'll go from the back of the GPS, you'll go down and end up coming right back up after you've coiled up, say about 11 to 10 feet worth of this cable. So when it comes back up, if you need to go to some sort of moving arm on the side of the kayak, that is where you will utilize the original hardware that came with this transducer. This is heavy duty. It's a nice piece of plastic. Of course, paired up with that, it's just going to make it that much more solid. There are two different types that are out there nowadays. This one right here, it is plastic. The other version is metal. So the metal one looks like a baby C-clamp and goes to the top of the unit and then mounts out. If you have that one, you will need to get a little bushing. They sell plastic bushings in the specialty drawers at Lowe's and Home Depot, and you can pick up one of those for probably a couple bucks. If not, and you're going with the arm with this guy, you're just going to bring that arm down, run the bolt through, and tighten it to this side, and that's what's going to allow this entire arm to swing in the water and out of the water. Something to keep in mind when you're doing this though, is you will have an offset on your side scan. Because this is now mounted to the side, you have an offset of whatever your center line is. Keep that in mind whenever you're setting waypoints. Probably not going to be that big a deal. You're in a kayak, you're going to be relatively close to whatever structure you're fishing, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. Alright guys, so I really hope this helped you with your video. It seems a lot more difficult than it really is. I know it's something that anybody that goes out there with some basic mechanical skills, if you've ever installed anything on your kayak from an anchor trolley to some sort of rod holder, I definitely believe you can get this job done. A lot of people get intimidated by it, but there's no soldering, there's no cutting wires and splicing wires. It's just simple nuts and bolts. You need some way to cut a piece of aluminum. You're welcome to sand and grind the edges to give it a clean finish. Maybe you want to spray paint it. It's a very simple process. And of course, the materials are so inexpensive to make the brackets. If you mess up, just start over. Just my words of wisdom, don't drop your transducer. Do not cut that transducer cable no matter what you do. And before you zip tie and silicone everything down, make sure to mock everything up into place. You want to have that all done, set, sit in the kayak for a few minutes, maybe make a couple little false casts so you can think about it. The last thing you want to do is install this entire GPS, all these wires run, everything silicone down, and you make your first paddle stroke on the water and you realize you just banged your GPS. So, think those things through. Take your time. It's a good Saturday, Sunday kind of project, whichever one you want to do. And I know y'all can get it done. If y'all do have any questions about any of the parts, that's going to be listed in the description down below. Feel free to comment and ask me questions. Lots of y'all have been asking questions. Y'all have been asking for this particular video. If you got more, like I said, jump over to Facebook. I've got it listed right here. That's definitely the easiest way to get a hold of me, and I can respond a little bit faster than, say, to the YouTube channel. Again, I've got an Instagram channel with lots of pictures of fish, a little bit of CPR, so go ahead and feel free to check that out and follow along over there. If you want to see more videos like this, I got some cool summertime fishing tactics coming up real soon for y'all to kind of get over this hot weather, the fish moving down deep. I want to share some of those tips and techniques with y'all, so go ahead and smash that subscribe button right down there and turn it gray. And until next time, thanks for watching.